Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to present a lecture on Indian Constitution. I, Dr. Sourav Poddar from the Department of Chemical Engineering, will be delivering a lecture on Indian Constitution. So the contents I have developed, that is, what is Constitution? Why do we need Constitution? History of the Constitution, framing of the Constitution of India as we belong from India, preamble to Constitution of India, what is the Constitution of India's need that we need to know, the main characteristics of the Constitution of India, and finally the conclusion that we will go through. So first we are moving down into what is Constitution. So the same slide once again. Constitution is basically, you can say, that is a set of rules that is required for any kind of an work that we need to do. So therefore, for a government to run a country will require a set of rules. So that rules is being defined by the government of India in order to deliver the proper movement of the activities. So that's why a set of rules have been defined. So this set of rules is known as the constitution of a constitution. So obviously, initially you can say some laws will be taken into account. So these laws generally made up due to two bodies, you can say, because it need to get approval from two bodies. One is Lok Sabha, the other one is the Rajya Sabha, in order to get a law to be implemented. So therefore, this whole thing, this Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, you can say to be the legislatures. So they are the main body who defines the law. So obviously the law will telling us what will be the consequences of the actions that has to be taken from time to time. So that's why this whole thing came down into the play, and this whole laws is being written down in a pen and paper, you can say so, or in manuscript format. So that manuscript is known as the constitution in large scale. So obviously there are various you can say persons who are defining it down. One is the government or the ruling persons, and the other one is the people of India who are being a part of it. So they comprises the whole thing. So it is, you can say in short, that is constitution will be divided into two segments. The one is the relation between the different levels of the government, whether it's a central government, whether it's a state government, or whether it's an local government, and then followed by the government and the citizen relationship. So all this together will comprise of the constitution in short. So if we move down into proper schematic representation of the constitution, as I was saying in the previous slides, so we observed that the constitution in the previous slide is being segregated into two parts. One is government, the other one is the people. And this government will comprises of legislative, judiciary, and executive. Legislative will make the laws, judiciary will implement the laws, and executives will enforces the laws. So this is the whole schematic representation of the constitution, what is being implemented. And now when we come down into the technical definition, you will observe that constitution is basically a set of fundamental principles or established precedents according to which a state or an organization is governed. So that's, I previously said, it's a set of laws which has been encrypted in a manuscript, or it is being written down in a pen and paper format. So this whole thing is known as, in technical terms, is known as the constitution. Or in one way of defining it down, it's known as the written constitution. Now when we consider it that, or other people, it is a definition of an one person, you can say, so then other person might be defining it in a different way. So it is basically a document containing laws and rules which determines and describes the form of the government, relation between the citizenship and the government. So this is another definition that will come down into the play. So there are two technical definitions which are available till now. So now in constitution, as we have seen in the previous slide, that is, we had government, we had the people of India. So obviously there will be an observer who will be looking into it. So according to that, the constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people. It is an instrument for the people to restrain the government. So this was one of the observer, that is Patrick Henry, who lived in 1736 to 1799. He defined this constitution in this manner. So previously we learned that when we have gone with a definition that it is a written part, it is a relation between the government with the other various segments of the government and the people. Now Patrick Henry is saying that it is not an instrument to restrain the people, it is an instrument for the people to restrain the government. So there is another terminology that came down into the play for constitution. So we learned that constitution is a definition for three. Now we will move down into the why do we need constitution. This is the next topic that we will move down. Why do we need? Because there are certain things has to be governed. I mean to say, we need constitution to govern a country. So that's why we need this constitution to govern the country properly. So this is the basic need. I mean to say, number one, and it will define the nature of the political system of the country. This is point number two. And point number three says that sometimes if we feel strong about an issue that might go against the larger interests, the constitution helps us to guide against this. So if suppose an government does a wrong implementation which is not good for the country, so obviously the constitution rights will be protecting the people of the country, and it will be defining it to a proper part. So that's why we need this constitution. So as we said that there are three bodies who are looking into it. One is the executive, legislature, and judiciary. So obviously they had their different functions so of the government. So they are looking into the fundamental rights. I mean to say, all are looking into the fundamental rights of the government. Now if an act is being against it, so this organizations will try to implement from time to time what is needed and what is not needed, and will try to restrict the other or restrict one another and try to implement this part. So all these three organizations function within the constitution. So obviously the need is basically to govern a country. Nature of the political system can be defined from the of a country can be defined, and it might, if some thing goes wrong on a larger interest, so the constitution will safeguard it against it, and the organizations who are looking into it will try to walk down into it. So this is the need. So now at times it has been observed that people, or the general public we call it to be, doesn't know their true power. So that has to be defined by the constitution. It's not only casting right, I mean casting vote. It will be basically your true fundamental powers that are needed, and that are needed to be enacted when it is being required for us. So this is the main reason why we need constitution to implement the true power that we required now. And to perform the following functions, that means the true power that we need to implement. So obviously we need the constitution. So to perform the functions, what we need? So we need the constitution, and which is basically a set of basic rules that allows for minimal coordination amongst the members of a society. So this is one need, you can say so. A constitution is to specify who has the power, you can say in short, to make decisions of the society. That means a certain rules is being written down in that manuscript, and that thing will be implemented from time to time, and it will be enacted from time to time. That is the main need, you can say. The power to make decision is the main function. The first one is the basic rules with a minimal coordination, which has is the one performance, you can say. The next one is power to make decision. The second one, to set some limits on what government can impose on its citizen. So suppose organization starts ruling a country, and they thinks that they are the supreme power, they can do whatever they feel like. So it's not like that. So this manuscript will define what will be their societal power or the organization power to rule the country. And the last one is to enable the government to fulfill the requirements of the society and create conditions for a better society. So this is the last requirement, you can say so. So these are the basic functions or the performance functions that need to be implemented from time to time. The next one, or till now we have gone with what is constitution and why do we need constitution. Obviously we need to understand what is there for a country like India. So for a country like India, who got its independence on 1947, so there the objectives were written down by Dr. Rajendranath Prasad, and then he signed the new constitution, and it took place in year November 26, 1949, and then the constitution was enforced with its effects on 26 January 1950. That means it took 3 years to define the constitution for the government of India to write the whole thing in a manuscript format or in a pen and paper format, and then it came down into act in 1950. So this is the history for constitution of India. So we have gone why, what is constitution, why we need, what is the history, from what time the history of constitution of India came down into play. Now we are talking about that it is certain set of basic rules that are written down in a plain pen and paper or in a written format. So while doing so, we have defined certain things. So what are the things? We'll now try to observe that. So obviously India is I mean to say, a country with various religions and race. We have various states. For example, in east we had Bihar, Orissa, Jharkhand, West Bengal, and then Assam, and then the Seven Sisters, which comprises of the total east. So their speaking language is also different. So all these things were taken down into play for eastern India. Obviously southern India has also various states, western India has various states, northern India has various states, and then also central India has various states. So the main objective of constitution is to set a union of India comprising the laws from the other countries we have taken down. That might be good for us. That's why we have taken. So there are countries that came down into play, that is the British India and Princely states. That means this is the main objective number one, to set up an union of India comprising British India and Princely states. Next one is to set up a federal form of the government which separates the state and the central government. So federal form came down into the play. The next one is to set up a democracy in terms of power for all the people of India. That means they will get justice, they will get equality, they will get freedom, whether it's a minority or depressed class or tribunal rights. So all these things were taken down into play. So democracy of power to all is the main important part. And then, as I was saying, that East India comprises of so many states, to protect the integrity of India and her sovereign rights over land, sea, and air. So obviously, this integrity part was the another important part that was needed. The next one, to make India attain its rightful place in the world, a place for work and a peaceful place for the mankind. So this is the next objective, you can say, that is required. So the basic objectives to comprise all the previous laws and regulations, then to develop a state and a central organization, and then to provide justice to all, and finally to integrate the all and to maintain peace and to showcase for the world. So for framing the constitution of India, the persons who were working into it, so the first president temporarily was Dr. Sachindranath Sinha. First was working into it. Then Rajendranath Prasad came down into the play, and then finally Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar became the chairman of the drafting committee. So these are the three main persons who have developed this or framed this constitution of India. Now, after framing, the first thing that will come down into the play, that is, certain persons have defined something. Obviously, there will be an opposition to raise an issue. So, this sat down for the first time, that was on 9th December 1946, after drafting all those things. So, who are there was 385 members, of which 292 were elected by the members of the provisional legislative assemblies, and 93 members are nominated by the princely states. After that, there were four commissioners, that is provinces of Delhi, then Ajmer, Malwar, Kurg, and British Balochistan. So these were the members who were present into it, and they tried to observe whether this whole thing was right or wrong. It may be wrong, it may be right. So all these things has to be defined. So all things came down into the play. So this took in December 9th, 1946. After, you can say, before the independence, and then after that, independence came down into 1947. Then the whole thing walked down, and then finally we defined our constitution or came down into play. That was on 26 January 1950. Now, while they sat down, this is a image, you can say. So what are the things they worked upon. That is, from UK they took nominal heads. From USA they have written the constitution. From Australia the concurrent list came down into the play in the Constitution of India. And from USSR the fundamental rights and 5-year plans. And from Germany the emergency provision. From Japan the law of Supreme Court function. From Canada the fundamental system and residuary powers. From South Africa the procedure of constitutional amendment. From Ireland the constitution of directive principles of state policies. So this was, in short, that was the framing of the constitution taken down into play. So now in nominal heads we had president, then the cabinet system of minister, then prime minister, parliamentary type of government, then we had the lower house, then the council of members on the lower house, then Lok Sabha speaker. So this was the part that were taken down from the UK. From USA we have taken down the fundamental rights, Supreme Court, head of the president, provisional state, judicial review. So all these things came down into play. Then from Australia, the concurrent list, central state relation, language of the preamble. So obviously each state has a different language. So the language is one part that came down into the plate, and then the rest I have said. So all these things were the important parameters we have taken down while defining the constitution or framing the constitution. So with this we